Let's talk about the new race for space.
Countries and companies are competing to develop brand new space technology. Right now, engineers are designing space colonies.
It's time to go back to the moon, this time to stay.
France and the US even have launched their own space force.
A space force as the sixth branch of the armed forces. That's a big statement.
So in this race, who could win and what's the big prize? And why should you and I care about what's happening up there? Let's take a second to realize how close the future actually is.
Space tourism is taking off. Billionaire Richard Branson just met his commercial space airline Virgin Galactic, the first publicly traded company of its kind.
It is the first space company to float on the stock exchange, and it's the first commercial space company to send 5 people into space.
And earlier this year, he opened a spaceport in New Mexico, where customers who have paid $250,000 each will soon board space planes to Earth's sub-orbit.
You have probably also heard of the billionaire Elon Musk and his company, SpaceX.
He's unveiled detailed plans to start construction on Mars in just 30 years' time.
SpaceX has a very long-term mission. We want to just keep improving rocket technology until there's a city on Mars.
Now I know it all sounds incredibly ambitious, but big ideas can become very real very quickly. It has happened before during the first space race.
In the 1950s, the US and the Soviet Union were locked in a Cold War over political ideology. Both sides started developing bigger and better rocket technology to use in a potential nuclear war and to keep each other in check. But they quickly took that fight to space. But the Soviets beat them to it by launching Sputnik, a tiny satellite that Washington feared could zip over the US and gather intelligence. 4 years later, the Soviet Union made history again by putting the first human in space. But soon enough, US President John F. Kennedy raised the stakes.
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
In 1969, NASA put the first humans on the moon.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
What followed that first space race were in fact many decades of science-driven space exploration. Countries even collaborated with each other's space programs to send space stations, telescopes, probes, and satellites across our solar system.
NASA stayed in the lead, partly because of its space shuttle. But over time, governments around the world started pouring less money into their space programs, including the US. Eventually, NASA retired the shuttle for good in 2011.
And in the meantime, new space powers emerged.
Countries like China and India, who have been pouring millions of dollars into their space programs.
China and India are basically trying to one-up each other in terms of getting into record books, with China going to the far side of the moon and India trying to land rovers on other planets, and which show a country's technological prowess, which turns into geostrategic influence.
It is private companies and the pockets of billionaires who have really been heating up the race.
SpaceX has built the world's first reusable rocket, and the company has been working with NASA to transport cargo to the International Space Station. The airplane manufacturer Boeing and a company called Blue Origin, owned by Amazon's CEO Jeff Bezos, are also competing for contracts.
So are dozens of other startups around the world, including Rocket Lab in New Zealand and iSpace in Japan.
And the idea is that if companies can profit, science does too.
The big prize is obviously for any private entity is to be profitable and make a business. Space is very hard. It's very expensive. For us, for example, it's doing really important things that really benefit humanity in some ways and make a profit.
The rewards could potentially be enormous.
NASA believes there are nearly 800,000 asteroids in our solar system, which contain valuable metals like gold, iron, and platinum. And just one of those asteroids, called 16 Psyche, is thought to have about 700 quintillion US dollars worth of valuable materials.
There are also real plans to mine the moon for water and helium-3,
which could both potentially be transformed into rocket fuel. And guess what? Laws have already been drafted in the US and Luxembourg to allow companies to keep what they mine on the moon, Mars, or anywhere else.
For now though, countries and companies say they are putting science first.
And that's a good thing because it will push the boundaries of human technology and could bring us the answers to life's big questions.
And unlike the last species, this time there seems to be more room for everyone. Hopefully that means everybody can win.